Why does the gap between our intentions and our actions feel like a canyon? We buy the gym membership, we download the language app, we create the budget spreadsheet, we possess the desire and often the knowledge. Yet consistent action remains elusive. This gap is one of the most universal human struggles, and it's the subject of our analysis today. The book, How to Change. Its author is not a motivational speaker. She is Katy Milkman, a behavioral scientist and professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Her approach treats the challenge of change not as a deficit of character, but as an engineering problem. She argues that our failures are not random. They are predictable, stemming from specific, identifiable cognitive biases and environmental flaws. This book, therefore, is not a collection of anecdotes or inspirational quotes. It is a blueprint. It is a toolkit filled with scientifically validated strategies designed to counteract specific points of failure. Our goal here is to deconstruct this blueprint, to examine the evidence behind each tool, and to assemble a logical framework for making meaningful, lasting change. We will investigate the science of why we fail and the mechanics of how to succeed. The analysis begins with a scene you already know. Picture a fitness center on the second day of January. Every treadmill is occupied. The air hums with determined energy, and new memberships are being processed by the minute. Now picture that same gym 6 weeks later. The crowds have thinned, familiar patterns have reemerged, and the phantom of abandoned resolutions haunts the empty equipment. This predictable cycle is the first puzzle. This is not a story about millions of individuals simultaneously losing their resolve. It is a story about a powerful, shared psychological trigger. Katy Milkman and her colleagues identify this phenomenon as the fresh start effect. Temporal landmarks, the start of a new week, a new month, a birthday, or a new year, create a psychological line in the sand. They allow us to mentally disconnect from our past failures, creating a clean slate and a surge of optimism and motivation. The data for this comes from a 2014 study in the journal Management Science. Researchers, including Katy Milkman herself, tracked multiple behaviors. They saw undeniable spikes in gym attendance, online goal setting, and even Google searches for diet at these key moments. The fresh start provides a powerful initial push, a measurable burst of intention into action. That initial push, however, has a quantifiable limit. If the fresh start effect were sufficient for change, the January gym would remain crowded through March. Its fleeting nature points to the core problem. A strategy for starting is not a strategy for finishing. The motivation generated by a new calendar page is a depreciating asset, and the rate of depreciation can be measured. Data from Strava, the social network for athletes, provides a stark illustration. After analyzing over 800 million user-logged activities, the company was able to identify a specific date when motivation typically collapses. They call it Quitter's Day, the second Friday in January. This is the point at which the initial resolve has faded for the largest number of people, and old habits begin to reclaim their territory. This isn't an isolated data point. Polling firms like YouGov consistently find that only a small fraction of people who make New Year's resolutions maintain them long-term. The evidence converges on a single conclusion. The energy from a fresh start is real, but it is also temporary. Relying on it alone is like trying to cross an ocean on a single gust of wind. It guarantees failure. To succeed, we need an engine, not just a sail. So if the initial motivation fades, what's the first wall we hit? Procrastination. To understand how to fight it, we must first diagnose its underlying mechanism. Procrastination is not simply a matter of laziness. It is the output of a specific cognitive glitch known as present bias or hyperbolic discounting. Our brains are hardwired to systematically overvalue rewards that are close at hand and undervalue rewards that are far in the future. Consider a choice, $100 today or $110 in a week. Many people take the $100. Now consider the choices $100 in 52 weeks or 110 days in 53 weeks. Suddenly, almost everyone will choose the $110. The 1-week delay is the same, but its psychological weight differs vastly. The work of economists like David Laibson shows that when a reward is immediate, it exerts a powerful pull that disrupts rational calculation. This is the engine of procrastination. The immediate small pleasure of checking your email outweighs the large distant reward of completing your project. Every time we choose the immediate, we are acting on present bias. Fighting procrastination, therefore, requires a tool that can either make the future reward feel closer or create an immediate reward for taking the right action. It requires a system that works with this bias, not against it. Given our brain's tendency to fail in the moment of decision, the most effective strategy is to make the decision in advance. This is the logic behind the first major tool in Milkman's blueprint, the implementation intention. This is a method for creating a behavioral algorithm in the form of an if-then plan. You are not merely stating a goal, you are defining the exact situational cue that will trigger a specific action. The goal, "I will exercise more," is vague and relies on future motivation. An implementation intention is precise. If it is 5:30 p.m. and I have finished my workday, then I will immediately change into my gym clothes and walk out the door. This plan forges a strong mental link between a future situation, the if, and a predetermined behavior, the then. When the cue occurs, the brain doesn't need to deliberate. The command has already been written. The effectiveness of this technique has been demonstrated across hundreds of studies. A landmark meta-analysis from psychologists Peter Gollwitzer and Pascal Sheeran, published in Psychological Bulletin, synthesized the results of 94 independent studies. The findings were conclusive. The result was a powerful effect size of your sheer 0.65. In social sciences, that figure indicates a highly reliable and significant impact on goal attainment across all domains. The power of an if-then plan extends far beyond personal productivity hacks. It has proven to be an effective tool in large-scale real-world interventions. One of the most compelling demonstrations of this is a field experiment designed to increase voter turnout. Changing civic behavior is a notoriously difficult problem, yet this simple technique yielded statistically significant results. The experiment, conducted by David Nickerson and Todd Rogers during the 2008 U.S. presidential primary, involved calling potential voters. One group of callers simply encouraged people to vote. Another group walked the individuals through forming a simple implementation intention. They were asked 3 questions. What time will you vote? Where will you be coming from? What will you be doing beforehand? The results were clear. Those who were prompted to create a specific plan were significantly more likely to cast a ballot. The intervention increased voter turnout by 4.1 percentage points over the control group. This is not a minor effect in the world of political science. It shows that the if-then command is not just a psychological trick for the individual, it is a scalable tool for influencing public behavior. Now we must address the most common and least effective strategy for change: willpower. The popular conception of willpower is that of a muscle. We believe we can strengthen it through exercise, but also that it can be fatigued. This idea, known as ego depletion, was famously proposed by psychologist Roy Baumeister and dominated self-help literature for years. However, this model has a problem. In recent years, the theory of ego depletion has been at the center of psychology's replication crisis. Numerous large-scale studies, discussed in journals like Perspectives on Psychological Science, have failed to reproduce the original findings. This casts serious doubt on the idea of self-control as a finite, muscle-like resource. But for our purposes, the resolution of this debate is secondary. The practical conclusion is that relying on moment-to-moment, heroic self-control is a fundamentally flawed strategy for long-term change. It requires you to constantly win an internal battle. A more effective approach is not to win the battle, but to avoid it altogether by redesigning the battlefield. This is an issue of efficiency. Willpower requires constant, conscious, high-energy monitoring. Environmental design is a one-time setup cost that provides continuous, low-energy returns. So if willpower isn't the answer, what is? The solution lies not in strengthening the self, but in redesigning the world. This is choice architecture. This is the practice of consciously designing your environment to make your desired choices easier and your undesired choices harder. It operates on a simple principle. We are profoundly influenced by the path of least resistance. The most effective strategy is to make virtue the easiest option. Corporate case studies provide powerful evidence. At Google's New York office, a problem was identified. Employees were consuming an excessive amount of M&Ms, which were freely available. The intervention, dubbed Project M&M, was simple. The M&Ms were moved into opaque ceramic jars, while healthier snacks like nuts and figs were placed in transparent glass jars. No one's choice was restricted. The candy was still available, but the simple act of making it less visible and slightly harder to access, adding the friction of lifting a lid, had a dramatic impact. In just 7 weeks, this small change in choice architecture reduced M&M consumption in that office by 3.1 million calories. This result, alongside studies on fruit placement, demonstrates that environmental design consistently outperforms willpower. Sometimes, simply adding friction isn't enough. For our most powerful impulses, we need a more drastic form of environmental design. This brings us to the commitment device, a strategy sometimes called an Odysseus contract. The name comes from the Greek hero who had his sailors tie him to the mast of his ship so he could hear the siren song without steering his ship into the rocks. A commitment device is a voluntary choice you make in the present. Its purpose is to restrict your own freedom in the future. You make it impossible or prohibitively costly to give in to a known temptation. You are acknowledging a future weakness and building a system to protect yourself from it. While the if-then command automates a future decision, the commitment device, as we see here, removes that decision from the equation entirely. The effectiveness of these devices is well documented in economics. A study by Ashraf, Karlan, and Yin in the Quarterly Journal of Economics offered a commitment savings product to clients of a bank in the Philippines. Those who enrolled, restricting their access to their funds, increased their savings by an average of 82% over the control group. The website stickk.com operationalizes this by allowing users to place financial stakes on their goals, money they lose if they fail. An NBER analysis of their data confirms that financial incentives significantly increase the probability of success. Environmental design can also work in reverse. Instead of only creating barriers to bad behavior, you can create irresistible lures for good behavior. This leads to one of Katy Milkman's most distinct contributions: temptation bundling. The strategy is to link something you want to do with something you should do, making the former conditional on the latter. Many of us feel we should exercise more, a should, and we also want to binge watch our favorite TV show, a want. A temptation bundle combines them. You are only allowed to watch the show while you are on the treadmill. The immediate gratification of the show acts as a powerful reward that pulls you through the less enjoyable activity. You are weaponizing your guilty pleasure, turning an obstacle into the engine of your success. This method works by directly counteracting the present bias we diagnosed earlier, providing the immediate gratification needed to pursue a long-term goal. This is not just a clever idea. Its impact has been measured. In her own 2014 study published in Management Science, Milkman tested this concept with university students. One group was encouraged to exercise, another group was taught to create a temptation bundle, linking gym visits with listening to a gripping audiobook. The results were significant. The temptation bundling group exercised between 29% and 51% more frequently than the control groups. The tools we've covered represent a fundamental shift. They move us away from fighting our impulses and toward designing for them. This is the architect's mindset, moving from being a soldier on a battlefield to being the designer of the entire map. This perspective solidifies our sense of agency and prepares us for the next phase, which is about making this new architecture self-sustaining. Once we have overcome the initial hurdles of procrastination and temptation, we enter the long, quiet phase of habit formation. And here, a new and often invisible enemy emerges. We forget. Many promising habits do not die a dramatic death. They simply fade away. The new set of vitamins is taken diligently for a week, then sits in the cabinet for months. The intention to meditate each morning is strong on Monday, but by Thursday, it's completely slipped our mind. This is not a moral failing, it is a cognitive one. Our conscious attention is a limited resource, and our working memory is notoriously unreliable for sustaining new routines. Habit researcher Wendy Wood from the University of Southern California emphasizes that relying on conscious thought and memory to drive behavior is a deeply flawed strategy. True habits are not remembered, they are triggered. The scientific literature on medication adherence provides a clear parallel. A study in the British Journal of General Practice found that patients' success in taking their medication regularly was significantly higher when they linked the action to a stable, existing part of their daily routine. The absence of such a trigger relies on memory, which is a recipe for failure. The problem isn't that we decide to quit, it's that our system has no reliable cue to begin. To build a system that doesn't rely on memory, we must first understand the architecture of a habit. Research from MIT in the 1990s revealed a simple neurological pattern at the core of every habit: the habit loop. Understanding this three-step process is essential to both creating new habits and dismantling old ones. The first step is the cue. This is the trigger, the information that tells your brain to go into automatic mode. It could be a time of day, a location, or the preceding action. The second step is the routine. This is the behavior itself. The third step is the reward. This is the payoff that helps your brain figure out if this loop is worth remembering for the future. This loop explains why engineering cues is so critical. A study published in the American Journal of Public Health found that placing a simple sign at the base of an escalator and staircase, a point of decision prompt, significantly increased stair use. The sign functioned as a powerful cue, disrupting the automatic routine of taking the escalator. To build a new habit, we must first build a reliable cue. The most effective way to create a new, reliable cue is to hijack an existing one. This is the principle behind a technique called habit stacking. Instead of trying to create a new trigger from scratch, you anchor your desired new behavior to a pre-existing, deeply ingrained habit. The completion of the old habit becomes the cue for the new one. The formula, popularized by B.J. Fogg of Stanford University, is simple. After I current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will sit down and meditate for 1 minute. Or, after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my running clothes. The existing habit is already automatic. By linking the new routine to it, you leverage the existing neurological pathway. This method of chaining behaviors is supported by research. A study on improving dental hygiene published in the Annals of Behavioral Medicine tested this principle. Participants who were instructed to floss immediately after they brushed their teeth, stacking the new habit of flossing onto the old habit of brushing, showed significantly higher and more consistent adherence than a control group. They successfully outsourced the triggering of the new habit to one that was already running on autopilot. A common reason that well-laid plans fail is their rigidity. We adopt an all-or-nothing mindset. We commit to exercising 7 days a week, and the first time we miss a day, the entire system collapses. We feel we have broken the streak and failed. This triggers what researchers call the what the hell effect, a cognitive distortion where a minor slip-up is seen as a license to abandon the goal entirely. I've already ruined my diet, so I might as well eat the whole box. A resilient system for change must account for reality. It must have built-in flexibility. Milkman advocates for incorporating planned exceptions or emergency passes into your goals. For example, your goal might be to go to the gym 5 times a week, with 2 pre-planned free passes to use for unexpected disruptions without feeling like a failure. This isn't a license to be lazy. It is a strategic defense against the perfectionist trap. By planning for imperfection, you prevent a minor deviation from becoming a catastrophic failure. It transforms the goal from never miss a day to hit the target 90% of the time, which is both more realistic and more psychologically sustainable. This flexibility is not a weakness in the system. It is a critical feature that allows it to withstand real-world pressures. This brings us to the ultimate skill that How to Change seeks to impart. The book is not just a list of tactics, it is a manual for becoming a better diagnostician of your own behavior. The most effective approach is not to blindly apply a single solution, but to accurately identify the specific reason for your failure and then apply the correct tool. It also means seeking the right advice. As we've learned, top performers often forget the struggles of a beginner. Seeking guidance from those who have only recently succeeded provides more practical, actionable steps. So is your plan failing because you never get started? The issue might be a weak, fresh start. Do you intend to act but get distracted? The solution is likely an implementation intention. Are you failing because you give in to temptation? Your solution lies in choice architecture or a commitment device. Are you failing because the new behavior simply doesn't stick? The issue is likely a weak cue, which requires habit stacking. This diagnostic approach moves you from a passive follower of advice to an active engineer of your own life. It requires you to observe your own behavior with objectivity, to gather data on your failure points, and to systematically test interventions. The goal is to stop asking the broad question, how do I change? And start asking the precise question, what specific obstacle is causing me to fail right now? And what is the evidence-based tool designed to overcome it? We have now deconstructed the blueprint. We have examined the evidence for each strategy, from harnessing fresh starts to architecting our choices and building automatic habits. Yet a blueprint itself builds nothing. Its value is only realized in its application. The knowledge of these tools is inert until it is deployed to solve a specific personal engineering problem. The process of change, as outlined by this body of research, is not a single heroic leap. It is a continuous iterative cycle. It is the work of diagnosing the immediate point of friction, selecting the appropriate tool from the kit, implementing it with precision, and then observing the result. Then you find the next point of friction, and you begin again. The work now shifts from understanding the plan to beginning the construction.